Sold the junk from your room for $1,200 to pay rent, my brother texted. I stared at the message until the letters blurred. Then, glad you're not making a fuss for once. The word junk sat in my throat like a stone. He didn't know. He couldn't know. That junk was my late father's collection. Antique bonds, old prototype notes, rare coins he'd hidden in dust-covered drawers when the world stopped caring about tangible wealth. I'd cataloged every piece in secret years ago. Their total value? $2.35 million. I typed back, "Got it." He sent a smirking emoji, and I realized something. He'd expected me to explode, but I didn't, not this time. Because his message wasn't just careless, it was a confession. And I knew right then he hadn't just sold the junk, he'd known exactly what he was doing. We grew up in a house of silence, no slamming doors, no shouting matches. My father taught us that real power was quiet. When he died, my brother, Adrian, cried at the funeral. I didn't. He inherited the house. I inherited the debts. "Fair," he said, "you're the one with the better job." And I believed him, until that text. For days I played the part, the calm older brother, the one who never argued. He visited often, smug in that familiar way, his grin sharp, his eyes assessing. But beneath that surface, I felt something awaken, not rage, something colder. I thought about the nights we used to sneak into Father's office, about how Adrian's hands lingered too long on the drawers where the collection was kept. He used to say, "Why keep what no one values anymore?" Maybe this had been his plan all along. I didn't accuse him. I thanked him for helping, and he believed me. He always did. I started small, a quiet visit to the antique dealer downtown, a casual question about rare 1913 Liberty nickels. The man looked uneasy. "Already sold a batch last week. Brought in by, Adrian Lofton, I think?" My pulse didn't rise. It slowed. That night I sat in the dark, phone screen lighting my face as I scrolled through his public auction page. Every piece, every coin, every signature, all of it traced back to him. I copied everything, screenshots, receipts, bank trails. My mind worked like a machine. No emotion, no hesitation. Then I dug deeper. His credit card statements, his online transfers, the sudden purchase of a Mercedes. Sold the junk to pay rent? Rent? He'd moved into a penthouse. Still, I stayed silent, smiled at his texts, laughed at his jokes. He bragged about his luck lately. I told him he deserved it. He never noticed how often I visited his place, how my eyes scanned for traces of what used to be mine. He thought I was naive. He had no idea he was standing on the edge of a very long, quiet fall. The report came in 2 weeks later. Every transaction, every appraisal, every proof of ownership tied back to my name. I printed it and folded it neatly into an envelope. That evening, I stopped by his apartment. He opened the door, glass of wine in hand. "You look tense. Money problems?" "Not anymore," I said. I placed the envelope on his table. He looked confused, then curious, then pale. He flipped through the pages, slower each time. His lips trembled. How did you—" "I didn't," I interrupted. "You did." He looked at me, face stripped of charm. "You can't prove—" "I already did." He stared at the documents like they were knives. And maybe they were, because in those pages, his little empire began to crumble. Fraud, stolen property, falsified signatures. Enough to bury him without ever raising my voice. He tried to talk, to explain, something about desperation, about needing the money. I listened, motionless. His words meant nothing. They were just air, collapsing in the space between us. Finally, I handed him a choice. Return what's left. Transfer every cent. Or I file this tomorrow. His jaw clenched. "You'd destroy your own brother?" I met his eyes. "You already did." The silence stretched. long enough for him to understand there was no forgiveness here, only balance. The next morning, the funds arrived, every cent. And later that week, his name appeared in the paper. Fraud investigation, business assets frozen. I didn't leak it. I just didn't stop it. He hasn't spoken to me since. Sometimes I imagine him sitting in that empty apartment, surrounded by everything he bought with what he stole. But all I feel is nothing. Not anger, not triumph, just a quiet certainty that justice doesn't need noise. I moved Father's collection into a small locked case, unpolished, untouched. It sits in my study now, next to the old family photo. I look at it sometimes, not because I want to remember, but because it reminds me what silence can do. He called it junk, but it wasn't the collection that made me rich. It was the lesson he never learned, that the quiet one always finishes the story.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and comment. Subscribe now to Cheating Stories Insight World for more amazing stories.